What would you do if you discovered that the person you least expected held the power to change your entire world? Sometimes, the most extraordinary transformations begin in the most ordinary moments. This is the story of Maria Santos, a single mother working 3 jobs to support her disabled son, and how one sleepless night on a cold hospital floor would set in motion a chain of events that would not only save her family, but inspire an entire community to believe in the impossible again. In a world where wealth often builds walls between people, this is a rare tale of how genuine human connection can bridge any divide. It's about the courage to ask for help, the wisdom to offer it, and the miraculous things that happen when 2 strangers choose compassion over indifference. Prepare yourself for a journey that will remind you why small acts of kindness can create ripples that change everything. Maria Santos pressed her back against the cold hospital wall, her arms wrapped protectively around her sleeping 4-year-old son, Diego. The pediatric emergency room bustled with activity even at 2 in the morning, fluorescent lights humming overhead like angry insects. She had been here for 6 hours, watching other families come and go, while Diego's breathing remained labored and concerning. The thin hospital blanket barely covered both of them as they sat on the uncomfortable plastic chair. Maria had given up her spot on the chair to an elderly woman hours ago, choosing instead to make a makeshift bed on the floor with her jacket. Diego's small frame fit perfectly against her chest, his warm breath tickling her neck as he finally found some peace and sleep. Maria's mind raced through the events that led them here. Diego had been born with a rare respiratory condition that required constant monitoring and expensive treatments. As a single mother working as a night cleaner at an office building, a part-time cashier at a grocery store, and weekend babysitter for neighbors, Maria barely scraped together enough money to cover rent and basic necessities, let alone the mounting medical bills. Earlier that evening, Diego had suffered his worst breathing episode yet. The inhaler that usually helped him wasn't working, and his lips had started turning blue. Maria had grabbed her son and run the 8 blocks to the hospital because she couldn't afford an ambulance. Now they waited, hoping someone would see them soon, praying the bill wouldn't force them into bankruptcy. The hospital's policy was clear about payment up front for non-emergency treatments, but the triage nurse had seen Diego's distress and admitted them anyway. However, Maria knew that compassion would only extend so far. She had already received 2 payment reminders from previous visits, each letter more urgent than the last. As Diego stood in her arms, Maria whispered soft Spanish lullabies her grandmother had sung to her. She thought about the conversation she'd overheard between 2 doctors earlier. They were discussing Diego's case, mentioning words like chronic condition and long-term care plan. The weight of those words pressed down on her shoulders like a physical burden. A few feet away, an impeccably dressed man in his 50s sat alone, occasionally glancing at his expensive watch. He wore a tailored navy suit that probably cost more than Maria made in 3 months, and his leather shoes gleamed despite the hospital's harsh lighting. He had been making quiet phone calls in what sounded like business negotiations, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being heard. The man, whose name was Robert Chen, had initially come to the hospital to visit his business partner who had suffered a heart attack. However, the late hour and his partner's need for rest had left him with time to kill before his early morning flight. He could have easily left for his hotel, but something about the atmosphere in the pediatric wing had made him stay. Robert had built his telecommunications empire from nothing, starting with a small repair shop in Chinatown and growing it into a multinational corporation. He understood struggle, though those days felt like another lifetime now. Sitting in this hospital, surrounded by families facing their darkest moments, brought back memories he rarely allowed himself to revisit. He watched Maria adjust Diego's position for the 100th time, her movements careful and practiced. There was something about her quiet strength that reminded him of his own mother, who had worked multiple jobs to keep their family afloat after his father died. The way Maria hummed softly to keep her son calm, the way she sacrificed her own comfort without a second thought, these were gestures he recognized from his childhood. A nurse approached Maria's corner, clipboard in hand.
Mrs. Ann.
Santos? We're ready to see Diego now, but I need to discuss payment arrangements first. Maria's face tightened, but she nodded. How much will it be? The nurse consulted her clipboard. The chest x-rays, breathing treatments, and doctor consultation will be approximately $1,200. Do you have insurance? I have basic coverage, but the deductible is very high, Maria replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Can I pay in installments? The conversation continued in hushed tones, but Robert couldn't help overhearing. He knew that tone in the nurse's voice, professional sympathy mixed with bureaucratic constraints. He had heard it before, years ago, when his mother had faced similar situations. Diego began to wake up, coughing softly. Maria immediately shifted into mother mode, checking his forehead for fever and listening to his breathing. Her movements were expert and worried, the kind of practiced care that comes from managing a chronic condition. "Mama, I'm thirsty," Diego whispered in Spanish. Maria looked around desperately. She had spent her last $5 on the taxi ride to get them here faster than walking. The vending machine seemed impossibly far away, and she didn't want to leave Diego alone. Robert stood up and approached their corner. "Excuse me, would you like me to get him something to drink?" Maria looked up, startled by the offer from a stranger. Her first instinct was to decline. She had learned early in life not to accept charity from people she didn't know. But Diego's cough was getting worse, and she could see the kindness in Robert's eyes. "That's very kind, but I can't pay you back right now," she said honestly. "No payment necessary," Robert replied gently. "What would he like?" After a moment's hesitation, Maria said, "Apple juice, if they have it. He likes apple juice." Robert walked to the vending machine and returned with apple juice and a small bag of crackers. Diego's face brightened as he sipped the juice, his cough subsiding slightly. "Thank you," Maria said, her gratitude evident. "I'm Maria Santos, and this is my son Diego." "Robert Chen," he replied, settling into a nearby chair. "Is he going to be okay?" Maria's composure wavered for a moment. "I hope so. He has a respiratory condition. Some days are better than others." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, Diego finishing his juice and crackers. Robert found himself thinking about his own son, now grown and working in London, and how different their lives might have been if circumstances had been reversed. The nurse returned, looking apologetic. "Mrs. Santos, I've spoken with the billing department. We can set up a payment plan, but we'll need at least $300 tonight." Maria's heart sank. $300 might as well have been $3,000. She had $42 in her purse and nothing in her checking account until her next paycheck. "Can I have a moment to make some phone calls?" she asked, though she knew no one in her contacts had that kind of money to lend. As Maria stepped away with her phone, Robert made a decision that would change both their lives forever. He approached the nurse's station and spoke quietly with the staff member handling Diego's case. "I'd like to take care of the Santos family's bill," he said simply. The nurse looked surprised. "The entire amount? That's quite generous, Mr. Chen. And yes, the entire amount plus any follow-up treatments they might need. Can you set up a fund for future visits?" Within minutes, the arrangements were made. When Maria returned from her unsuccessful phone calls, the nurse had news that left her speechless. "Mrs. Santos, your bill has been taken care of. An anonymous donor has covered all of Diego's expenses for tonight and established a fund for future treatments." Maria looked around the waiting room in shock, her eyes landing on Robert, who was pretending to read a magazine. Something in his demeanor told her he was responsible, but when she approached him, he simply smiled and said, "Good news travels fast in hospitals." Diego was finally called in for his treatment, and Maria carried him toward the examination rooms. She turned back once to see Robert still sitting there, and their eyes met across the room. In that moment, she understood that a stranger's kindness had just changed their lives, and she wondered if she would ever see him again to properly thank him. The treatment went smoothly, and Diego's breathing improved dramatically with the proper medication. As they prepared to leave the hospital, Maria asked the nurse if she could leave a message for the person who helped them. The nurse handed her a piece of paper and said the donor had left his contact information, but only if Maria wanted to reach out. Maria stared at the business card with Robert Chen's name and company information. She had never heard of Chen Telecommunications, but the address was in the city's most expensive business district. She carefully placed the card in her purse, next to the payment plan paperwork she no longer needed. Walking home as the sun began to rise, Diego's hand in hers, Maria felt something she hadn't experienced in years: hope. Not just for Diego's immediate health, but for the possibility that there were still good people in the world who helped others without expecting anything in return. She didn't yet know that Robert had done more than pay a hospital bill. She didn't know that he had been thinking about her situation all night, or that he had already started making plans that would extend far beyond their chance meeting in a hospital waiting room. Robert returned to his hotel, but sleep eluded him. He kept thinking about Maria's quiet dignity and Diego's brave smile despite his illness. He thought about the system that made it so difficult for working families to access healthcare, and about all the other families who might not be fortunate enough to encounter a stranger willing to help. As he prepared for his business meetings the next day, Robert made another decision. He was going to find out more about Maria Santos and her son. Not to interfere or take over their lives, but to understand if there were ways he could help that went beyond paying bills. The encounter had awakened something in Robert that had been dormant for years. Despite his success, he had felt increasingly disconnected from the struggles that had shaped his character. Meeting Maria and Diego had reminded him of his responsibility to use his resources meaningfully. Meanwhile, Maria arrived home to their small apartment. Diego finally breathing easily and asking for breakfast. As she prepared his favorite cereal, she found herself humming with more energy than she had felt in months. The business card remained in her purse, but she wasn't sure if she would have the courage to use it. She didn't know that courage would soon become irrelevant because Robert Chen was already planning to find her. 3 days after the hospital encounter, Maria was scrubbing floors at the downtown office building where she worked her night cleaning job. The building housed several companies, including what she had discovered was Robert Chen's telecommunications empire, though his offices occupied the penthouse floors she never cleaned. The irony wasn't lost on her that she had been walking through his building for over a year without knowing the man who would change her life worked just floors above her. Diego was staying with Mrs. Rodriguez, their elderly neighbor who watched him during Maria's overnight shifts. The arrangement cost Maria $20 per night, money she could barely spare, but Mrs. Rodriguez was trustworthy and genuinely cared about Diego. More importantly, she knew how to handle his respiratory episodes and had her own inhaler from dealing with asthma. As Maria worked, she replayed the hospital scene in her mind. She had Robert's business card memorized by now but hadn't found the courage to contact him. What would she say? Thank you seemed insufficient for someone who had probably saved them from financial ruin. Every time she reached for her phone, doubt crept in. Why would a successful businessman want to hear from someone like her? Meanwhile, Robert was experiencing his own internal struggle. He had spent the past 3 days making discreet inquiries about Maria Santos through his network of contacts, not to invade her privacy, but to understand how he might help without overstepping boundaries. What he learned both impressed and concerned him. Maria had been working multiple jobs for 2 years, ever since Diego's condition was diagnosed. She had no family support system. Her parents had died in a car accident when she was 22, and Diego's father had disappeared when the medical bills started mounting. Despite these challenges, she had never missed a rent payment, never failed to provide for Diego's needs, and had somehow maintained a spotless credit record by paying every bill, even if it meant eating rice and beans for weeks. Robert's assistant, Jennifer, had initially been puzzled by his requests for information about a woman who cleaned buildings, but she had worked for Robert long enough to know he had his reasons. When she presented her findings, she included a note that surprised them both. Maria worked in their building. She's been cleaning the 15th through 20th floors for Chen Telecommunications subsidiary companies for 14 months, Jennifer reported. According to her supervisor, she's never missed a shift, never complained about difficult assignments, and several tenants have specifically requested that she clean their offices because of her attention to detail. Robert stared at the file, realizing that Maria had been walking through his professional world for over a year while fighting battles he had been completely unaware of. The thought made him feel both humbled and determined to act. That evening, Robert made an unprecedented decision. Instead of leaving the building at his usual 6 o'clock departure time, he stayed late, timing his exit to coincide with the start of the night cleaning shift. He wanted to see Maria again, to gauge whether his instinct to help was welcome or if he would be interfering where he wasn't wanted. Maria arrived at the building at 10:30, her usual start time. She went through her routine of checking supplies, reviewing her assignment sheet, and beginning with the bathrooms on the 15th floor. She was efficient and thorough, taking pride in work that others might consider menial. Every dollar earned brought her closer to covering Diego's medical expenses and maintaining their small but stable life. Around midnight, she was vacuuming the hallway when the elevator dinged unexpectedly. Most of the building was empty by this hour, so Maria looked up curiously to see who was working so late. Her breath caught when Robert Chen stepped out of the elevator. He looked different in casual clothes, khakis and a simple button-down shirt, more approachable than the imposing figure in the expensive suit she remembered from the hospital. But his kind eyes were exactly the same. "Hello, Maria," he said gently. "I hope you don't mind me stopping by." Maria turned off the vacuum, suddenly self-conscious about her cleaning uniform and the fact that she was working while he lived in a world where people cleaned up after him. "Mr. Chen, I didn't expect to see you here. Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine. I actually came to see you," Robert replied. "I found out you work in this building, and I wanted to check on Diego. How is he doing?" The genuine concern in his voice melted some of Maria's nervousness. "He's much better, thank you. The treatments worked perfectly. We saw his regular doctor today, and she was amazed at how much his lung function had improved. "I'm very glad to hear that," Robert said. "Maria, do you have a few minutes to talk? Maybe we could sit in the conference room." They walked to a nearby conference room where Maria had cleaned countless meetings she would never be invited to attend. Sitting across from Robert at the polished table felt surreal, like stepping into someone else's life for a moment. "I want to be honest with you," Robert began. "I've been thinking about you and Diego since that night at the hospital. I did some research, not to invade your privacy, but to understand if there were ways I could help beyond paying one medical bill." Maria's defenses went up immediately. "Mr. Chen, I appreciate what you did, more than you'll ever know, but I don't need charity. I can take care of my son." "I know you can," Robert replied quickly. "That wasn't what I meant. What I learned about you was impressive, Maria. You're raising a son with complex medical needs while working multiple jobs, you've never missed a payment, and according to everyone I spoke with, you do everything with dignity and excellence. That's not someone who needs charity. That's someone who deserves opportunities." Maria studied his face, trying to understand his intentions. "What kind of opportunities?" Robert leaned forward, his excitement barely contained. "I'd like to offer you a position with my company. A real job with benefits, health insurance that would cover Diego's treatments, and a salary that would let you work one job instead of 3. She had dreamed of such a possibility, but never dared to believe it could happen. "What kind of position?" "I don't have a college degree or business experience." "You have something more valuable than either of those things," Robert replied. "You have character, reliability, and work ethic. Those can't be taught. Skills can be learned." He explained that his customer service department needed someone to manage client relationships for their smaller business accounts. The role involved building relationships, solving problems, and ensuring customer satisfaction. Skills Maria had developed through years of managing difficult situations and keeping multiple employers happy. The starting salary would be $55,000 annually, with full health benefits that include coverage for pre-existing conditions, Robert continued. There would also be opportunities for advancement based on performance. Maria's mind reeled. $55,000 was more than she currently made from all 3 jobs combined. Health insurance that covered Diego's treatments would save them thousands of dollars annually. But doubt crept in alongside hope. "Why would you do this for someone you barely know?" she asked. "This seems too good to be true." Robert was quiet for a moment, considering how to explain something he wasn't sure he fully understood himself. "When I was Diego's age, my father died suddenly. My mother worked 3 jobs to keep our family together, just like you're doing. She never got the break she deserved, the opportunity that could have changed our lives sooner. I succeeded despite those circumstances. But I always wondered what might have been different if someone had given her a real chance." He paused, looking directly into Maria's eyes. "I'm not trying to save you, Maria. I'm trying to recognize what you've already accomplished and give you the platform you've earned. This isn't charity. I genuinely believe you'll excel in this role and become an asset to the company." Maria felt tears threatening to spill over. The possibility of giving Diego a stable life, of being present for bedtime stories, instead of rushing between jobs, of having health insurance that meant they could address his condition proactively instead of reactively. It was everything she had worked toward but never believed she could achieve. "I would need to give my current employers notice," she said slowly, testing the reality of the possibility. "Of course. Take whatever time you need to transition professionally. The position will be waiting for you." They spent the next hour discussing details. Robert explained the company structure, the specific responsibilities of the role, and the support system that would help Maria succeed. He also shared more about his own background, making it clear that he understood the challenges of building a life from difficult circumstances. As their conversation wound down, Maria made a decision that surprised them both. "Mr. Chen, can I ask you something personal?"
Course. Do you have children?" Robert's expression softened.
"I have a son, David. He's 28 and works in London for an investment firm. He's brilliant and successful, and I'm proud of him, but I realize I missed a lot of his childhood building the business. I was always traveling, always working. I provided for him financially, but I wasn't as present as I should have been." Maria nodded, understanding more about Robert's motivations. "You're giving me the chance to be the kind of parent you wish you had been able to be." "Maybe," Robert admitted. "But I'm also giving my company the chance to benefit from someone who understands the value of hard work and genuine care for others. This has to be mutually beneficial to work long term." Before leaving that night, Robert gave Maria his direct phone number and email address. "Don't hesitate to contact me with any questions or concerns. This is a big decision, and I want you to feel completely comfortable with it. Maria walked home as the sun rose, her mind spinning with possibilities. For the first time in years, she could imagine a future where she wasn't constantly worried about money, where Diego could have the medical care he needed without financial stress, where she could be the mother she wanted to be, instead of the working machine she had become. When she arrived home, Diego was awake early, playing quietly with his toy cars while Mrs. Rodriguez dozed in the chair. Maria picked up her son and held him close, breathing in the scent of his hair and feeling the steady rhythm of his healthy breathing. "Mama, why are you crying?" Diego asked, noticing her tears. "Happy tears, mijo," Maria whispered. "Mama might have some very good news soon." That afternoon, after Diego was settled for his nap, Maria did something she hadn't done in months. She sat down without cleaning something, without working on a side project, without rushing to the next task. She simply sat and imagined what their lives could become. She thought about the last time she had read Diego a bedtime story without falling asleep from exhaustion. She thought about the parent-teacher conferences she had missed because of work schedules. She thought about the playground visits that had been cut short because she needed to get to her next job. Robert's offer represented more than financial stability. It represented the chance to be the mother Diego deserved, the opportunity to build a life instead of just surviving one. As evening approached and it was time to get ready for what might be one of her last nights cleaning buildings, Maria made her decision. She reached for her phone and dialed Robert's direct number. "Hello, this is Robert Chen." "Mr. Chen, this is Maria Santos. I've thought about your offer, and I would like to accept the position." Even through the phone, she could hear his smile. "That's wonderful news, Maria. When would you like to start?" "I can give my current employers 2 weeks' notice. Would that work?" "That's perfect. Welcome to Chen Telecommunications, Maria. I think this is going to be the beginning of something very good for all of us." After hanging up, Maria sat in her quiet apartment and allowed herself to fully feel the magnitude of what had just happened. In the span of 1 week, a stranger's kindness had transformed from a single act of generosity into a life-changing opportunity. She didn't yet know that Robert had already begun preparations that went far beyond her new job. She didn't know about the additional support systems he was putting in place, or the long-term plans he was developing to ensure Diego's medical needs would never again threaten their stability. What Maria did know, as she prepared for another night of cleaning floors, was that hope had returned to her life in ways she had never imagined possible. And for the first time in 2 years, she went to work humming, not from determination, but from genuine joy. Maria's first day at Chen Telecommunications arrived with a mixture of excitement and terror that she had never experienced before. She stood outside the gleaming office building at 7:30 in the morning, wearing her best outfit, a navy blazer and skirt she had purchased from a thrift store and carefully altered to fit properly. In her hands she carried a notebook, 3 pens, and more hope than she had carried in years. The same elevators she had watched from a distance while cleaning now carried her up to the 15th floor, where her new office was located. The transformation felt dreamlike, as if she was stepping into someone else's life. Diego had woken up early to wish her luck, presenting her with the drawing he had made the night before, showing a woman in a business suit with "My Mama the Boss" written in crayon underneath. Robert had arranged for Maria to spend her first week training with Jennifer, his executive assistant, who would help her understand the company culture and learn the systems she would need for her customer service role. Jennifer had initially been skeptical about Robert's decision to hire someone with no business experience, but she was professional enough to give Maria a fair chance. "Welcome to Chen Telecommunications," Jennifer said warmly as she led Maria through the office. "Mr. Chen Telecommunications Guide, Chen has told me wonderful things about you, and we're excited to have you join our team." The office was nothing like the places Maria had worked before. Instead of harsh fluorescent lighting and worn furniture, everything was designed for comfort and productivity. There were plants throughout the space, comfortable seating areas for informal meetings, and large windows that filled the rooms with natural light. Maria tried not to stare as they walked past conference rooms with technology she had only seen in movies. "This will be your workspace," Jennifer said, stopping at a modern desk with a new computer, phone system, and organizational tools already set up. "Mr. Chen wanted to make sure you had everything you needed to succeed." Maria ran her hand along the smooth surface of the desk, still processing that this space belonged to her. Through the window, she could see other office buildings stretching into the distance, filled with people pursuing careers she had never imagined she could access. The first few days were overwhelming but exhilarating. Maria threw herself into learning the company's customer management systems, studying client files, and understanding the telecommunications services they provided. She stayed late each evening, determined to prove that Robert's faith in her wasn't misplaced. Jennifer observed Maria's dedication with growing respect. Despite having no formal business training, Maria approached each task with thoughtfulness and attention to detail that many experienced employees lacked. She asked intelligent questions, took detailed notes, and treated every client interaction as an opportunity to build relationships rather than simply complete transactions. "You're a natural at this," Jennifer told Maria at the end of her first week. "Your instinct for customer service is better than people who have been doing this for years." Maria's success with clients became apparent almost immediately. Her genuine empathy and problem-solving skills resonated with business owners who were tired of dealing with impersonal corporate representatives. When a small restaurant owner was struggling with his phone system, Maria didn't just process his service request. She researched his specific needs and recommended solutions that would save him money while improving his operations. Robert watched Maria's progress with satisfaction and something deeper, a sense that his instincts about her character had been completely accurate. During their weekly check-in meetings, he saw how quickly she was absorbing new information and how naturally she connected with clients who had previously been difficult to please. "How are you adjusting to the new schedule?" Robert asked during one of their meetings. "Is the change from night work to day work going smoothly?" Maria's face lit up with genuine happiness. "Mr. Chen, I can't begin to tell you how wonderful it is to be home with Diego in the evenings. Last night, I helped him with his homework. We cooked dinner together, and I read him 3 bedtime stories. I hadn't done that in over a year." She paused, then continued with characteristic honesty. "I won't lie to you. There are moments when I feel like I don't belong here, like I'm pretending to be someone I'm not. But then I talk to a client and help solve their problem, and it feels completely natural." Robert nodded, remembering his own early days of building the business when imposter syndrome had been his constant companion. "That feeling of not belonging will fade as your confidence builds. You do belong here, Maria. Your results prove it." Indeed, Maria's results were impressive. Within her first month, she had improved response times for her assigned clients by 30% and received more positive feedback than any new hire in the department's history. Her approach was simple but effective. She treated each business owner as if they were her neighbor, with respect, attention, and genuine care for their success. One particularly challenging case involved a family-owned bakery whose phone and internet services had been unreliable for months. Previous representatives had treated it as a routine technical issue, but Maria recognized that the communication problems were affecting the bakery's ability to take orders and coordinate deliveries. She worked with the technical team to identify the root cause and personally followed up to ensure the solution worked perfectly. The bakery owner, Mrs. Patterson, was so impressed that she called Robert directly to praise Maria's service. "That young woman saved my business," she told him. "She didn't just fix our phones. She understood what we needed and made sure we got it. You're lucky to have her." Such calls became routine. Robert found himself fielding praise for Maria's work from clients across all business sectors. Her reputation within the company grew just as quickly. Colleagues began asking for her input on difficult customer situations, recognizing that her instincts for relationship management were exceptional. However, Maria's success at work was just one part of the transformation in her life. The stability of regular hours and reliable income had allowed her to establish routines with Diego that had been impossible before. They now had dinner together every evening, during which Diego would tell her about his day at school, and she would help him with homework. Diego's health had also improved significantly since they gained access to quality healthcare through Maria's job benefits. His pediatric pulmonologist was able to adjust his treatment plan based on regular monitoring, rather than emergency interventions. The difference in Diego's energy levels and overall well-being was remarkable. Mrs. Rodriguez, who no longer needed to provide overnight childcare, had become more of a grandmother figure in their lives. She would often stop by in the evenings to check on them, and was delighted to see how much happier both Maria and Diego had become. "You look like a different person," Mrs. Rodriguez observed one evening as Maria prepared Diego's lunch for the next school day. "Not just because of the nice clothes, but because you're not carrying the world on your shoulders anymore." Maria reflected on this observation as she tucked Diego into bed that night. The constant anxiety that had defined her life for 2 years was finally beginning to fade. She still worried about Diego's health and their future, but those concerns no longer consumed every waking moment. For the first time, she could imagine possibilities beyond just surviving until the next paycheck. 3 months into her new position, Robert called Maria into his office for a performance review. She approached the meeting with nervous energy, hoping her enthusiasm hadn't masked any significant mistakes. "Maria, I want to talk to you about your future with the company," Robert began, and Maria's stomach dropped, fearing she was about to be let go. "Your performance has been exceptional," he continued, and Maria's relief was visible. "In fact, I'd like to discuss expanding your responsibilities. Several of our larger corporate clients have specifically requested to work with you, and I think you're ready for more complex accounts." The promotion would come with a salary increase to $70,000 annually and additional responsibilities that would challenge Maria to grow professionally. It also included access to training programs that would help her develop formal business skills to complement her natural abilities. "I'm honored by your confidence in me," Maria replied, "but I want to make sure I'm not taking on more than I can handle. Diego is still my first priority." "Of course he is," Robert assured her. "That's one of the things that makes you so effective with our family business clients. You understand their priorities because you live them. The expanded role is designed to grow with your capabilities, not overwhelm them." They discussed the details of the new position, including flexible scheduling that would allow Maria to attend Diego's school events and medical appointments without compromising her work responsibilities. Robert had clearly thought through every aspect of how the promotion would affect her life outside the office. As Maria left the meeting, she carried a folder containing her new job description and salary information that represented financial security she had never imagined possible. But more than that, she carried validation that her hard work and dedication were valued and recognized. That evening, Maria and Diego celebrated with takeout from their favorite Mexican restaurant, a luxury they could now afford regularly. As they shared tacos and talked about Diego's upcoming school science fair, Maria reflected on how dramatically their lives had changed. "Mama, are you happy now?" Diego asked with the direct curiosity of a child. Maria considered the question seriously. "Yes, Mijo, I'm very happy. Are you happy?" Diego nodded enthusiastically. "I like that you're home for dinner now."
"And I like that you don't look worried all the time anymore."
Out of the mouths of babes, Maria thought. Diego had identified exactly what the changes in their lives had accomplished. Not just financial stability, but emotional peace that benefited both of them.
As she prepared for bed that night, Maria looked at Robert's business card, which she still kept in her wallet as a reminder of how their lives had changed. She thought about the stranger who had seen potential in her that she hadn't seen in herself, who had created opportunities instead of just offering charity. But Maria was beginning to understand that Robert's generosity extended beyond what he had already done. Through their weekly meetings and casual conversations, she sensed that he was planning something more, something that would take his support of her family to an entirely new level. She didn't yet know about the education fund he had established for Diego, or the long-term career development plan he was creating for her advancement within the company. She didn't know that he had already begun discussions with his estate attorney about ensuring Diego's medical needs would be covered for life, regardless of what happened to Robert's business interests. What Maria did know was that she had found more than a job and more than a benefactor. She had found someone who believed in her family's potential and was committed to helping them achieve it. The feeling of being supported rather than struggling alone was still new enough to surprise her every day, but she was finally beginning to believe it was real and lasting. Meanwhile, Robert watched Maria's continued success with deep satisfaction. His decision to help her had evolved from a single act of kindness into a meaningful relationship that was enriching both their lives. Seeing Maria flourish professionally and personally reminded him of why he had started his business in the first place, not just to accumulate wealth, but to create opportunities and positive impact. As the 4th month of Maria's employment approached, Robert finalized plans that would take their relationship to an entirely new level of commitment and support. He was about to make Maria an offer that would transform her from employee to partner, securing her family's future in ways that would extend far beyond her wildest dreams. 6 months after Maria had started working at Chen Telecommunications, Robert called her into his office for what he described as an important conversation about her future with the company. Maria had grown comfortable with their regular meetings, but something in Robert's tone suggested this discussion would be different from their usual performance reviews and project updates. "Maria, I want to share something with you that I haven't discussed with anyone else," Robert began, his expression more serious than she had seen before. "I've been thinking about the long-term direction of my company and my personal legacy. You've become an integral part of both." Maria settled into her chair, intrigued but slightly apprehensive. Over the past months, she had learned to trust Robert's judgment, but she still sometimes worried that her good fortune was too extraordinary to last. "As you know, My son David works in London and has built his own successful career in finance. He's made it clear that he has no interest in taking over Chen Telecommunications. For years, I've been concerned about what would happen to the company and our employees when I'm ready to retire. Robert stood up and walked to the window overlooking the city skyline. I've decided that instead of selling to a large corporation that might not value our culture and commitment to clients, I want to transition ownership to someone who understands and embodies the values this company was built on. Maria's heart began racing as she started to understand the direction of the conversation, but she couldn't quite believe what she thought he was suggesting. I want to offer you a path to partnership and eventual ownership of the company, Robert continued, turning to face her directly. Not immediately, of course, but through a structured program that would allow you to earn equity while developing the leadership skills necessary to run the business. The words hit Maria like a physical force. Partnership, ownership, leadership of a multi-million-dollar company. The concepts were so far beyond her experience that she struggled to process what Robert was proposing. Mr. Chen, I'm honored, but I don't understand how that would be possible, Maria said slowly. I've only been here 6 months, and I don't have business education or management experience. You have something more valuable than either of those things, Robert replied, returning to his desk and pulling out a thick folder. You have integrity, vision, and the ability to build genuine relationships with clients and colleagues. Those are the foundation of leadership. Everything else can be learned. He opened the folder and spread out documents that outlined a comprehensive development program. I'm proposing a 5-year plan that would gradually increase your ownership stake in the company while providing you with the education and experience necessary to lead it effectively. The plan was breathtakingly thorough. Robert had arranged for Maria to attend business school part-time, with full tuition coverage and a flexible schedule that would accommodate her studies. She would rotate through different departments within the company, learning every aspect of the operations from finance to technology to strategic planning. The equity program would start with a 5% ownership stake, increasing annually based on performance milestones until you reach majority ownership.
Robert explained.
By the end of the 5-year program, you would own 51% of Chen Telecommunications, with the option to buy out my remaining interest over time. Maria stared at the documents, trying to comprehend the magnitude of what Robert was offering. The financial projections showed that even the initial 5% stake would be worth more money than she had ever imagined possessing. Majority ownership of the company would make her wealthy beyond her dreams while giving her the power to shape the company's future direction. Why me? Maria asked, her voice barely above a whisper. You could recruit experienced executives, people with proven track records in running companies. Robert sat back in his chair, considering how to explain a decision that was based as much on intuition as analysis. Do you remember our first conversation in the conference room downstairs when I offered you your current position? Maria nodded, remembering how overwhelming that opportunity had felt at the time. You asked me the same question then. Why would I help someone I barely knew? My answer hasn't changed, but it has deepened. Over these past 6 months, I've watched you approach every challenge with thoughtfulness, integrity, and genuine care for others. You've built relationships with clients that go beyond transactions to true partnerships. You've earned the respect of every colleague you work with. Most importantly, you've maintained your values and priorities while adapting to an entirely new professional environment. He paused, pulling out a tablet that displayed client satisfaction metrics and employee feedback scores. Your performance data supports what I observe personally. Client retention rates for your accounts are the highest in company history. Employee satisfaction in departments that work with you has increased significantly. You have a natural ability to bring out the best in both clients and colleagues. Maria looked at the data, still struggling to believe the numbers reflected her own work. But running a company is different from managing client relationships. You're absolutely right, Robert agreed. That's why this is a 5-year development program rather than an immediate transition. You'll learn financial management, strategic planning, team leadership, and all the other skills necessary for executive leadership, but you'll learn them while applying your natural strengths in relationship building and problem solving. They spent the next 2 hours going through every aspect of the proposal in detail. Robert had thought through potential challenges and created support systems to address them. Maria's schedule would be demanding but manageable, with childcare assistance for Diego during her evening classes and study time. The company would provide mentors from other successful businesses to guide her through the learning process. I need to think about this, Maria said finally, her mind reeling with possibilities and concerns. This is life-changing for both Diego and me, but it's also a huge responsibility to your employees and clients. Take all the time you need, Robert replied. This decision will affect the rest of your life, and it needs to feel right to you personally, not just professionally. That evening, Maria sat in her living room after Diego had gone to bed, staring at the proposal documents spread across her coffee table. The financial implications alone were staggering. The equity program would eventually make her wealthy enough to secure Diego's future regardless of his medical needs. But beyond the money, Robert was offering her the chance to lead and shape an organization that employed over 200 people and served thousands of clients. She thought about her conversation with Mrs. Rodriguez earlier that week, when the older woman had observed how much Maria had grown in confidence and capability. "You were always smart and hard-working," Mrs. Rodriguez had said, "but now you carry yourself like someone who knows her own worth." That observation resonated as Maria considered Robert's offer. 6 months ago, she would have been overwhelmed by the mere suggestion that she could run a company. Now, while still intimidated by the scope of the responsibility, she found herself genuinely excited by the challenge and possibilities. The next morning, Maria called her son's teacher to arrange a conference about Diego's academic progress. If she was going to make a decision that would affect both their lives so dramatically, she wanted to understand how the changes might impact Diego's education and development. "Diego is thriving," Mrs. Martinez, his teacher, reported. "His attendance has been perfect since the beginning of the year. He's more focused in class, and his social interactions with other children have improved significantly. The stability in his home life is clearly benefiting his school performance." Mrs. Martinez paused, then added, "I hope you don't mind me saying this, but Diego talks about his mama with such pride. He tells the other children that his mama helps people with their businesses and that she's very important at her job. It's clear that your success is building his confidence too." This insight gave Maria a new perspective on Robert's offer. Diego's well-being had always been her primary motivation for working so hard, but she was beginning to understand that her professional growth was benefiting him in ways beyond financial security. Seeing his mother succeed and be respected was teaching Diego lessons about possibility and self-worth that would shape his own future. 3 days later, Maria requested another meeting with Robert. She arrived at his office with a notebook full of questions and concerns she had developed while thinking through the proposal. "I want to accept your offer," she began, "but I need to discuss some conditions that are important to me."
Robert nodded, pleased by her thoughtful approach. "What concerns do you have?"
"First, I want to make sure the company's current employees are protected during any transition. Many of them have been loyal to Chen Telecommunications for years, and they shouldn't suffer because of changes in leadership." "Absolutely," Robert agreed. "Employee protection and retention are essential to the success of any transition plan. Second, I want to establish a foundation that provides support for working families facing medical crises, similar to what Diego and I experienced. The company should use some of its resources to help others the way you helped us." Robert smiled, recognizing in Maria's request the same instincts for helping others that had drawn him to her originally. "That's an excellent idea. We can incorporate charitable giving and community support into the company's mission." They discussed additional details, including Maria's concerns about maintaining her relationship with Diego during the demanding years ahead, and her desire to keep the company's focus on serving small and medium-sized businesses rather than pursuing only large corporate accounts. "I have one more request," Maria said finally. "I want you to remain involved in the company for as long as you're willing. Your experience and wisdom are valuable, and I would benefit from your mentorship throughout this process and beyond." "I was hoping you would say that," Robert replied. "I'm not ready to retire completely, and I would love to continue contributing to the company's success while watching you develop as a leader." They shook hands on the agreement, and Maria officially became a partner in Chen Telecommunications. The news would remain private until she had begun her business education and demonstrated readiness for increased responsibilities, but the commitment was real and binding. That evening, Maria celebrated with Diego by taking him out for ice cream and then to the park where they could talk privately about the changes coming to their lives. "Mama, does this mean we're rich now?" Diego asked with 6-year-old directness. Maria laughed, pulling him closer on the park bench. "It means we're going to be very comfortable, mijo. But more importantly, it means Mama is going to learn how to help other families the way Mr. Guard, Chen, helped us." "Ah, are you going to be too busy to read me stories?" Diego asked, his only real concern about the changes. "No, baby," Maria assured him. "Story time is the most important part of my day, and that will never change." As they walked home together, Maria reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. Less than 7 months ago, she had been sleeping on a hospital floor, terrified about paying for Diego's medical care. Now she was preparing to become the leader of a successful company, with the power to help other families facing similar challenges. The transformation still felt surreal, but Maria was beginning to trust that it was real and lasting. Robert's faith in her abilities had awakened confidence she hadn't known she possessed, and her success in the role had proven to both of them that his instincts were correct. But even as Maria embraced this extraordinary opportunity, she remained grounded in the values and priorities that had sustained her through the difficult years. Diego would always be her first consideration, and helping others would remain central to her vision of success. As they approached their apartment building, Maria noticed Mrs. Rodriguez waiting for them with a broad smile and a homemade flan to celebrate Maria's good news. The older woman had become like family to them, and her support during their transition had been invaluable.
Mija, I am so proud of you, Mrs.
Rodriguez said, embracing Maria warmly. Your parents would be amazed to see what you've accomplished. That night, as Maria tucked Diego into bed and read him his favorite story, she thought about her parents and how different Diego's childhood was already from her own. While she had faced uncertainty and struggle from an early age, Diego was growing up with security, opportunity, and the knowledge that his dreams were achievable. The responsibility of leading a company felt enormous, but Maria was beginning to understand that she was uniquely qualified for the role precisely because of the experiences that had once seemed like disadvantages. Her understanding of struggle would make her a better leader for employees facing difficulties. Her experience with limited resources would help her make wise financial decisions. Her gratitude for opportunities would ensure she created similar chances for others. As Diego drifted off to sleep, Maria sat quietly in his room, planning the future she was now empowered to create. The little boy sleeping peacefully had no idea that his mother was about to become one of the most successful businesswomen in the city, but he knew the most important thing. She loved him completely and would always be there for him. Meanwhile, Robert was making his own plans for the transition ahead. He had already begun identifying mentors and advisors who could support Maria's development, and he was working with lawyers and accountants to structure the ownership transfer in ways that would benefit everyone involved. But beyond the business planning, Robert felt a deep sense of satisfaction about the decision he had made. In Maria, he had found not just a successor, but someone who would take his company to new levels of success while maintaining the values and integrity that had always defined it. The partnership between Robert and Maria was about to enter its most challenging and rewarding phase, with changes ahead that would transform not only their lives, but the lives of everyone connected to Chen Telecommunications. 2 years into Maria's partnership development program, Chen Telecommunications had evolved into something neither she nor Robert had originally envisioned. Under Maria's growing influence, the company had expanded its mission beyond providing telecommunications services to become a catalyst for small business success and community development. The Santos Foundation, named in honor of Maria's parents and established as part of the company's charitable arm, had already helped 43 families navigate medical crises similar to what Maria and Diego had faced. The foundation provided direct financial assistance, connected families with resources, and advocated for healthcare policy changes that would prevent other families from falling through the cracks of the system. Maria's business education was progressing exceptionally well. She attended classes 3 evenings per week at the city's top business school, where her professors consistently praised her ability to apply theoretical concepts to real-world business challenges. Her classmates, initially puzzled by the single mother who brought practical experience to every discussion, had come to respect her insights and often sought her perspective on complex case studies. Diego, now 8 years old, had adjusted beautifully to his mother's demanding schedule. His health remained stable thanks to consistent medical care, and his academic performance had improved dramatically. More importantly, he seemed to thrive on the family's new sense of purpose and possibility. He often accompanied Maria to company events, charming employees and clients with his curiosity about the business world. "Mama, when I grow up, can I work with you and Mr. Robert?" Diego asked one evening as Maria helped him with his math homework. "You can do anything you want when you grow up, mijo," Maria replied, "but first you need to focus on being the best 8-year-old you can be." Diego grinned, returning to his multiplication problems with renewed focus. His confidence and optimism were perhaps the most visible signs of how dramatically their lives had changed. The worried, often sick little boy who had struggled to breathe in the hospital waiting room had grown into a healthy, ambitious child who talked excitedly about his future. At the office, Maria's responsibilities had expanded significantly. She now managed major corporate accounts worth millions of dollars annually, and supervised a team of 15 customer service representatives. Her natural leadership style, which emphasized collaboration and relationship building over hierarchy and competition, had created one of the most productive departments in the company. Jennifer, who had initially been skeptical about Robert's decision to hire Maria, had become one of her strongest supporters and closest advisors. "I've worked with dozens of executives over the years," Jennifer told Robert during one of their regular briefings. "And Maria has something special. She makes everyone around her better at their jobs because they want to live up to her standards." The company's financial performance reflected Maria's positive impact. Client retention rates had reached record highs, and new business referrals had increased by over 60% since Maria joined the leadership team. More significantly, employee satisfaction surveys showed dramatic improvements in morale, with workers specifically citing Maria's leadership style and the company's expanded community involvement as factors in their increased job satisfaction. Robert watched these developments with deep satisfaction and growing confidence in his decision to prepare Maria for full leadership. During their weekly mentoring sessions, he was consistently impressed by her strategic thinking and her ability to balance financial success with social responsibility. "You've transformed this company in ways I never imagined possible," Robert told Maria during one of their sessions. "We're not just more profitable, we're making a meaningful difference in our community while providing better service to our clients." Maria's response reflected the humility that had remained constant despite her professional growth. "I couldn't have done any of this without your support and the incredible team we have here." Success feels different when it's shared with people who believe in the mission. As Maria approached the midpoint of her 5-year development program, Robert decided it was time to accelerate her transition to full leadership. The company was thriving under her influence. She had proven her ability to handle complex business challenges, and her vision for the company's future was clear and compelling. "I want to discuss moving up your timeline for majority ownership," Robert told Maria during their next meeting. "You're ready for full leadership responsibility now, and the company will benefit from your complete authority to implement your vision. Taking full control of the company would be both an enormous honor and a tremendous responsibility." She thought about the employees who depended on Chen Telecommunications for their livelihoods, the clients who trusted the company with their business communications, and the families the Santos Foundation was helping. "I'm willing to take on that responsibility," she said finally, "but I want to make sure we structure the transition in a way that protects everyone's interests and maintains the stability we've built." They spent the following months working with attorneys and financial advisors to design a transition plan that would officially make Maria the majority owner and CEO of Chen Telecommunications. Robert would remain as chairman of the board and senior advisor, ensuring continuity while giving Maria complete operational authority. The announcement of Maria's promotion to CEO was met with enthusiasm throughout the company. Employees had watched her growth and leadership development with pride, and many saw her success as validation of the company's commitment to promoting talent from within rather than hiring external executives. Local business media covered the story extensively, fascinated by Maria's journey from night janitor to CEO of a major telecommunications company. However, Maria was careful to frame the coverage around the company's mission and community impact rather than her personal transformation.
"This story isn't about me,"
she told a reporter from the city's business journal. "It's about what's possible when people support each other and when companies take responsibility for the communities they serve. I'm just one person who was fortunate enough to receive an opportunity and determined enough to make the most of it." The interview ran with the headline, "From Hospital Floor to Executive Suite, How One Woman's Journey is Transforming Business Leadership." The article sparked national interest, leading to speaking invitations and requests for Maria to share her story at business conferences and leadership forums. Diego read the article with pride, though he was more interested in the photograph of his mother in her office than in the details of her business accomplishments. "Mama, you look like a real boss in that picture," he observed with 8-year-old honesty. "I am a real boss now," Maria replied with a laugh, "but I'm still your mama first, and that's the job I care about most." As CEO, Maria implemented several initiatives that reflected her values and vision for the company's future. She established an employee ownership program that gave all workers equity stakes in the company's success. She created partnerships with local schools to provide telecommunications technology and business mentorship to students from low-income families. She also expanded the Santos Foundation's mission to include small business development loans for entrepreneurs who couldn't access traditional financing. One of Maria's most significant decisions was to relocate the company's headquarters to a renovated building in the neighborhood where she had grown up. The move brought good jobs to an area that had been economically struggling and demonstrated the company's commitment to community development rather than just community service.
This is where I learned the values that guide how I run this business, Maria explained to the employees during the building dedication ceremony.
Being located here keeps us connected to the real-world impact of our decisions and reminds us who we're working to serve. The new headquarters included a community center where local families could access free financial planning services, computer training, and small business development resources. Diego often spent after-school hours there, doing his homework while observing the steady stream of neighbors seeking help and support. Robert remained actively involved in the company's strategic planning, but he spent more time focusing on his own philanthropic interests and family relationships. The success of his mentorship with Maria had inspired him to create similar opportunities for other promising individuals from disadvantaged backgrounds. You've shown me a model for meaningful wealth transfer that goes beyond just passing money to the next generation.
Robert told Maria during one of their regular dinners.
You're using the resources and platform I provided to create opportunities for others, which multiplies the impact exponentially. 3 years after becoming CEO, Maria received an invitation that represented the pinnacle of her professional recognition. The White House requested her participation in a small business leadership summit focused on innovative approaches to economic development and community engagement. As she prepared for the trip to Washington, D.C., Maria reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. The little boy who had struggled to breathe in a hospital waiting room was now a healthy 11-year-old who talked confidently about his plans to study business and work alongside his mother someday. The woman who had cleaned floors at night to pay medical bills was now being recognized as a national leader in business innovation. But perhaps most significantly, the company that had once been a traditional telecommunications provider was now a model for how businesses could successfully integrate profit with purpose, creating value for shareholders while making meaningful contributions to community well-being. At the White House Summit, Maria presented Chen Telecommunications' community development model to an audience that included cabinet members, Fortune 500 CEOs, and social entrepreneurs from across the country. Her presentation focused on the business case for community investment and the leadership practices that had created such positive outcomes. The most successful businesses are those that understand their role in the larger ecosystem, Maria told the audience. When we invest in our communities, we create stronger markets for our services, more qualified employees for our workforce, and more resilient local economies that benefit everyone. After her presentation, several other CEOs approached Maria about consulting opportunities to help them implement similar community engagement strategies in their own companies. The requests led to the creation of Santos Consulting, a subsidiary of Chen Telecommunications that helps other businesses develop socially responsible practices while maintaining profitability. Diego accompanied Maria to the White House event, experiencing firsthand the national recognition of his mother's work. As they toured the building afterward, he asked the question that had been on his mind throughout the day. Mama, do you think Mr. Robert knew all this would happen when he first helped us at the hospital? Maria considered the question thoughtfully. I don't think he could have imagined exactly how everything would develop, but I think he recognized something in our situation that reminded him of his own experiences. Sometimes helping others is really about healing something in ourselves. That evening, back in their hotel room, Maria called Robert to share the highlights of the summit and thank him once again for the opportunities he had created for their family. You don't need to keep thanking me, Robert said with characteristic warmth. Watching you succeed and seeing the positive impact you're having on so many other families is more reward than I could have asked for. You've taken what I offered and made it into something far more meaningful than I ever imagined. As Maria prepared for bed, she looked out the hotel window at the lights of the nation's capital and thought about all the families across the country who might be facing challenges similar to what she and Diego had experienced years earlier. Through her work at Chen Telecommunications and the Santos Foundation, she was now in a position to help many of those families, creating ripple effects of positive change that would extend far beyond what any single act of kindness could accomplish. The transformation that had begun on a cold hospital floor with a stranger's generosity had evolved into something much larger, a model for how individual compassion could grow into systemic change, and how one family's journey from crisis to success could light the way for countless others. Back in their city, Robert was making his own plans for the future. At 72, he was considering full retirement, confident that Maria's leadership would take Chen Telecommunications to even greater heights while maintaining the values they both cherished. He had also begun discussions about donating the majority of his wealth to causes focused on education and healthcare access, inspired by the impact he had witnessed through his relationship with Maria's family. The story that had begun with a simple act of kindness had become a legacy of transformation that would continue to benefit families and communities for generations to come. Maria Santos, once a desperate mother sleeping on a hospital floor, was now a nationally recognized leader whose work was changing how America thought about the relationship between business success and social responsibility. And Diego Santos, once a sick little boy whose future seemed uncertain, was growing up with limitless possibilities and a front-row seat to witness how determination, compassion, and opportunity could combine to create extraordinary change in the world.